Hi, I'm Olivia, project support for the sustainability team and a registered nurse by background. And this is Sustainable Voices at UCLH. Here we'll talk to our staff about what sustainability means to them and what inspires them to make sustainable changes for our patients now and in the future. So let's get started.
Hello, I'm Luke O'Shea. I'm Director of Innovation. The team does an awful lot around transforming the trust and the services and the way we work, but I'm also Executive Lead for Sustainability. Well, I've always thought about the environment and sustainability. I was brought up on David Attenborough documentaries at home. I used to read books, but it became very obvious about the last 2 decades that the science has got very serious in terms of climate, and we're in really big trouble. This is the biggest global challenge we face. And the wake-up call for me on that was that it became very obvious that that the healthcare industry is a very big part of the problem, and particularly acute hospitals like ours.
Yeah, there's plenty of work that we need to be doing in the healthcare sector. But Luke, I've got you here to talk to me about waste, but I thought it'd be good to redefine how we think about the term waste to start off with. I know generally we hear the word waste and conjure images of landfill and overflowing rubbish bins, but waste can look like so much more than this. And I know this is a topic that you've become particularly fascinated by and extremely passionate in, and have really been delving into understanding that in the context of a healthcare system. So it'd be really interesting to hear how you've come to think about waste and what it means for you.
Yeah, I'm really interested and perhaps overexcited about waste. And yes, it is also about the fact that we throw loads away. But actually, it's so much bigger than this. I suppose the light bulb moment for me on waste was looking into how the Japanese view waste. So they have lots and lots of words for waste. And I always think about the fact that, in England, we have lots and lots of words for things like rain, so spitting and tipping it down, and even more fruity versions. But in Japanese, they have lots and lots of different words for waste, which enable you to see waste in a different way. There were some really interesting things when I actually sat and watched the processes in a coffee shop, which is a really good place to spot waste or where waste isn't happening, and how well they manage stock, but also things like motion, the movement of people, making things easy for people to reach, the process of making a cup of coffee to be made very efficiently and quickly. And so the Japanese are very interested in the unnecessary movement of people. And we see that all the time in the hospital. If you go on the ward, you'll see nurses walking back and forwards to supply rooms to get a really common item or whatever, and you're thinking, that's so interesting. If that was in a coffee shop, it would just be there where it was needed. So it's the kind of the inventory stuff. In fact, you told me about that in things like people putting in cannulas unnecessarily in the emergency department, just in case somebody needs an intravenous, whatever drug, and then it doesn't get used. And actually that takes you on to the next bit, that sometimes you end up with errors and defects and problems, things like medication errors. They're not done right first time, and then further down the line, they need further resources to fix. And that's another thing that the Japanese talk about, defects that require resources to fix, because those additional resources are wasted if you hadn't have got it right first time. So there's so many examples of that you can kind of, once you start opening your eyes, then you can't stop seeing the waste everywhere.
It's completely true, and it is really eye-opening. I suppose it's interesting to understand how redefining how we think about waste links in with sustainability.
Exactly. It turns out that waste is really, really important for sustainability. So every time we put in that cannula and it doesn't get used, there was a carbon footprint to that. Every time we throw away medication that isn't used, there's a carbon footprint to every pill. That is a waste, and there is a cost to that because it takes time. And what would be a good example would be things like the connection between a delay in the step of a discharge process. So, for example, not having the medication ready or the diagnostics not being done in time. And it means someone has to stay an extra day in hospital, increasing the length of stay. That has a huge carbon footprint to it, as long as, in addition to a cost, just to provide all those intensive resources for that person to stay an extra day in hospital. The relationship between quality, between cost and between carbon is actually often deeply connected.
Yeah, it is so fascinating when you start to realize all of these links between things. So I suppose the next question is, do you think improving efficiencies is just a business goal, or can it be applied to how we care for our patients and provide quality healthcare services?
I think it's inextricably linked to quality. Again, my eyes were opened when I went to a Toyota factory that say that quality and safety is completely connected to reducing waste, and I think the same is absolutely true in a hospital. If you look at the pathways that our patients go through, if we get those right, if we reduce mistakes, we do the right thing at the right time, we dramatically reduce waste, and we also reduce the problems and the safety problems that result from it. Patients, for example, coming in multiple times for uncoordinated tests and appointments, and often those appointments might not have everything that's needed to make a decision. So again, that requires us to think about how do we make those pathways work as well as possible for the patients. That delivers them a much, much better experience, but also a higher quality service, a better outcome earlier down the line, and also less carbon, less coming into the hospital, taking time out of their busy lives. So I think, all of this for me fits together in terms of, how quality, waste and sustainability interlink.
I suppose to kind of finish up with, if there was one takeaway from today's chat, what do you want people to think about when they hear the word waste next time?
Yeah, look for waste everywhere. Look for waste in your home life. Look for waste around the hospital, the healthcare area you work. Start to spot not just all the things that are being thrown away, but also people moving, going to pick up things when they're not necessary, which aren't near them or whatever. In your home life, look at the way you make tea or toast. In my kitchen, I have all of the things I need to make a cup of tea really nearby. I only boil the amount of water that I need for that cup of tea. And, I'm saving money, and I'm doing things more quickly and more cheaply. I was thinking this morning as well about, I was down to the last bit of toothpaste in the tube. And if you can scrape out that last bit of toothpaste, it might be 5 or 10% of the toothpaste. Over time, all those little bits of waste add up into, a whole new tube of toothpaste that you don't need to buy. Just start looking for it and seeing where you can see it, and have fun with it, and hopefully make a difference.
Thank you so much for coming along. It was really interesting to talk to you about waste and to hear your new and innovative way of thinking about it.
Oh, it's been really fun. Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Till next time.